welcome to the Zoning Board of Appeals. I will read, we have one item on the agenda, the application of Dickerson and Jennifer Miles. And I will read the public notice. Please take notice that the Zoning Board of Appeals of the Village of Sleepy Hollow will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, November 18, 2020 at 8 p.m. in the Municipal Building, 28 Beekman Avenue, Sleepy Hollow, New York, to hear and consider the application by Dickerson and Jennifer Miles to construct a one-story addition and screened-in porch to the existing single-family residence where the following variances from Chapter 450 of the Code of the Village of Sleepy Hollow are required. Article 6, 450-34B, applicability of regulations, adding to and altering an existing non-conforming building or lot, minimum rear yard setback 25 feet, existing rear yard setback 24 feet. Article 6, 450-34B, applicability of regulations, adding to and altering an existing non-conforming building or lot, minimum accessory structure setback 3 feet, existing accessory structure setback 2.6 feet. Article 6, 450-35, schedule of regulations, minimum rear yard setback 25 feet, existing rear yard setback 24 feet, proposed rear yard setback 9 feet. Article 7, 450-E2B, supplementary regulations, location of accessory uses in residence districts. Minimum distance between accessory structure and principal building 10 feet, existing distance between accessory structure and principal building 16 feet, proposed distance between accessory structure and principal building 4 feet. The property involved in the application is located at 3 Terrace Close, is situated in the R2A zoning district, and is shown on town tax assessment maps as section 11011, block 1, lot 13. A copy of the application and accompanying documents are available for review at the Department of Architecture, Land Use Development, Buildings and Building Compliance during normal business hours, or may be reviewed and downloaded from the village's website. All people are entitled to attend and be heard at this public hearing. Village Hall is accessible to persons with disabilities. I have in the application following documents: the public hearing notice, the determination letter from the building department, the zoning board application, part 1 through 4, the zoning compliance form, the short environmental assessment form, the survey prepared by Aristotle Bornazos, Professional Corporation, photographs of existing locations dated October 14th, 2020, the deed, the drawings prepared by now Christopher Kane, RA, dated September 23rd. We also have a letter from Niall Kane Studio, dated November 17th, 2020, that we just received tonight. We have a letter from Phelps Hospital of the same date. We have a letter from Marie and Robert Guarnieri, dated November 15th, 2020. A letter dated again November 15th, 2020, this time from Joan Levy and Richard Weiss. And we have, for the last item, a letter dated November 5th, 2020 from Arthur Brady. Sean, have all the returns been received?
Yes.
Thank you. So, just before we start, you'll notice that we have 4 of 7 members. A vote tonight has to be unanimous. So as we go through the application, I'm sure you'll get a flavor for how the board is thinking, and it'll be your choice. I'm sure the board will be happy to adjourn to next meeting if you want more members present to vote. So I suggest we just proceed with the application.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Niall Kane. I'm the architect for the owners. Dickerson and Jennifer Miles. I made a little error here saying Dickerson Edition. It's just like Miles Edition. Okay. So this is the survey of the property You can see it is an unusual size lot. Let's skip to this. Sorry. Just a second. I wanted to be, try to zoom into this little, not letting me zoom in. Yeah, here we go. This is where the property is located on Terrace Close, and you can see we're adjacent to the Phelps Hospital here. And there's a wooded area behind the house and the parking beyond that. Again, this is the machine is not cooperating that well, but let me see. Anyway, you can see that sorry, I don't know this. Anyway, so this is the existing footprint of the house here. The lower level here, I sort of forgot, it's so big there, I don't really have to zoom in. And this is the proposed addition in the back. And again, this is the area of the Phelps Memorial property, largely wooded area. The addition is not really visible from the street, and it is barely visible from adjacent neighbors on each side. This is the existing house. There's a sunroom area in the back here, garage on the east side. This is again looking, there's a little woodshed here. This is looking towards the sunroom, looking east. This is the garage looking west towards the river. And this is the back of the house here. This is where the addition is proposed at the back. This is the property to the west, looking, this is sort of a very large lawn to the west here. This is again to the east. This is just showing the neighboring area, the neighbors on both sides. And it is a very sort of private area, this lot, from adjacent properties. This is a series of photographs showing the wooded area to the back, which is the Phelps Memorial property. And this is the existing house. You can see that there's a very small kitchen here, a little breakfast nook. So the client wanted to push out to the back along here. It's the existing elevations, back elevation. What we're proposing here is an addition which would include a large kitchen, which is needed for the house. We'll be converting the existing kitchen into a little mudroom and have a little butler pantry between the kitchen and the existing dining room. Moving along towards the west, there's a TV sort of family room here. And then at the very end, a screened-in porch area, which would be sort of similar in vocabulary, architectural vocabulary, to the existing sunroom right here. And again, this is you can see from the front, the screened-in porch will protrude just a little bit to the west here, the entry doors to the screened-in porch. And this is looking again at this is actually the garage here with the floor above. This is the addition to the north. You can see it's a single story addition. And this is the addition in the back, single story. Trying to keep it fairly sort of clean and nondescript. It's to be stucco color that would be similar to the brick, similar color to the brick. And again, this is looking east. You can see the screened-in porch that looks very similar to the vocabulary of the existing sunroom. And there'll be a railing above, roof deck, terrace above the screened-in porch. And again, this sort of looking from the Phelps property, you see the single-story addition and the screened-in porch as well. And it will be improving the railing across the existing sunroom, and then continuing that railing across and roof deck across to the screened-in porch. And that, I think, is it for the presentation. I did give you this letter which describes the 5 points that you are familiar with for the to consider when considering a variance, and we're asking again, of course, for the rear yard variance to allow this addition to be built in the back of the house. It is largely it's located behind the house and not visible from adjacent residential properties or from Phelps Memorial Grounds due to the dense wooded area and the parking lot beyond. It will not adversely affect the character of the neighborhood or be a detriment to nearby properties. The benefit sought by the applicant, for number 2, whether the benefit is sought could be achieved by some other method. Practically speaking, it really can't. We're putting the new kitchen adjacent to the dining room, and it is certainly the most sort of unobtrusive way to achieve this addition by putting it on the back of the house where it is largely not visible from adjacent neighbors or from the street. It would not, putting the same addition to the west would be much more visible and much more, and not really work in terms of the appropriate adjacencies to the existing spaces within the house.
So, sorry to interrupt, but what you're saying is that this addition there would not require any type of variance if it was put to the west of the residence, because the required side yard setback wouldn't
Well,
interfere.
there's space to the west. There's a very large side yard setback to the west, but it just wouldn't make any sense to have these spaces beyond the sunroom space. It would just be sort of an impossible, kind of practically speaking, to function. To have the kitchen on the other side of the house from the existing dining room. And these rooms are very formal in the house, so the Miles want to retain a very formal aspect of the existing house, and then this would be a much more sort of loose, open plan kind of concept for the addition. The spaces from the kitchen to the TV room. And then whether the requested variance is substantial, there is a substantial setback variance we are requesting, but the proposed coverage of the existing house and the addition is only 14%, or 3,526 square feet, which is well under the maximum 20%, or 5,173 square feet permitted under the current zoning regulations. And the same is true for the FAR. It's really, compared to the property, the house could be considerably bigger on a property of this size.
Well, what is there now in the rear yard? What is that going to be built on?
I mean, it's really sort of, to be frank, kind of an unpleasant little strip. I mean, it's sort of dense and shaded, and it's not. I mean, you don't use it. It's not particularly functional.
Right.
When I first met with the Miles, we sat in the side yard, and I said, "Wow, this is really like your rear yard, isn't it?" Because of the expanse of it. So, when one of the things that that needs to be considered when you're talking about the next category, whether the alleged difficulty is self-created, when you have an very unusual lot size, that's like reading through the New York State guidelines for zoning review, and this is a criteria that is considered not self-created when you have such an awkward lot size that, practically speaking, you can't. If it was a nice square lot, it would be very easy to do this, of course, without asking for a variance. But given the unusual configuration, this is really the only way, and actually the best way, because of the sort of hidden, disguised nature of it in the back of the house, to do an addition of this size, of this scale.
I get that. Is it just a backyard right now? Is it just grass?
Well, I'll show you the photographs again. It looks like a little. I mean, this is looking for the backyard from the house, and actually maybe more descriptive photograph are these lower ones here. I should use my little mouse thing. You can see these lower ones here. This is sort of the slot. It really has a sort of feeling of a slot, given all the sort of wooded area of Phelps, which is kind of almost seems like it's encroaching on the house. So the appearance of it is really quite narrower than the 24 feet that is, apparent on the survey. So this is where the addition will go, and you can see it's just not an area that they use. It's not really their yard. Their yard is this beautiful space here to the west.
Are there any utilities running through the backyard?
No, they're all, I mean, everything's coming through the house, certainly as a point of, which is always the case with any construction, any utility lines would be verified, but really there's nothing coming certainly from Phelps property to the house. There's no utility lines.
And so the point you're making, just so I understand it, is look, you have, I think the front yard setback is 25 feet. And you have a house that's actually 38 and a half feet away from the front yard setback.
Right.
You have a 15-yard side yard setback, and it's really immeasurably recessed from the side yard setback on the west side, and substantially recessed from the east side yard
From
setback.
Both side yards, exactly.
And so when you construct in the rear yard, if you push it out west or you push it out in the front, which you would never do because it's a beautiful brick house, but even if you did, you could make it even bigger than what you're proposing. But what you're proposing is to put it in the rear where, from what I can tell, the only people who are ever going to see that is someone who lives on the east or west side of this lot. It's obviously not going to be visible then to a resident on the rear because that's Phelps Memorial Hospital, and
They have taken no issue with it, and I'm not exactly sure where the support neighbors are that are written letters of support.
We're the only ones who potentially even see it, well, directly on
We'll,
the side.
we'll open the public hearing. then.
Oh, sorry, I was asking for you.
And it doesn't have an environmental impact because essentially it's going not into wetlands, and it's not.
Yeah, there's there are no environmental considerations as far as the environmental assessment form and so forth. There's nothing.
So really what's going to happen is if I drove by the house tonight and I drove by it a year from now after the construction's done, I would never be able to tell the difference that the construction is
No.
done.
No. And it is only one story, of course, too, so that's another, there's no, sky exposure plane issue or anything, and certainly there isn't with Phelps anyway, but even if there was some, property building closer there, there would be no issue with sky exposure plane.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes. I have a question. So you're telling me that the property behind it's Phelps,
Yes,
which Phelps can develop anything they want there at any time? Right, because this is, the wooden area is near the
It's adjacent to the driveway.
the driveway, so they could do parking and stuff.
yeah. I mean, there is the closest, construction of any type is the parking lot, of course.
Right, so they could expand that. And Phelps right now is not doing anything, so we don't know what the future will do. My concern is, we have trees there and stuff, and as you said, it's already so close, like almost they're invading the house, and now it's gonna be even closer. It's only 9
Well,
feet.
Yeah, but the trees aren't, the trees, there's be some pruning possibly of the trees, but that's not, I mean, the proximity to trees, I don't think is a issue or concern. We're not cutting down any trees to do this. There's no
Right,
large trees.
you can't,
or anything
it belongs
like
to
that.
Phelps.
Well, no, I just meant, since we're discussing trees, there are no trees on the property that we'd be cutting down that might be a concern. And there's really no, and because it's one story, there's no, we wouldn't be doing any large pruning or damage to any of their trees or anything to that effect.
I do understand,
And they
but
do, of course, have taken no issue to the project based on their letter that they submitted.
no, I saw that, but that's at this point. Phelps has developed so much in the last 10 years.
Yes.
Each year seems like they put
Right.
something else up.
But I mean, to be fair, I would have to think that this is sort of the reason of their letter, is they'd be the first ones to anticipate any kind of future construction that may in some way, I mean, I can't imagine a scenario that this addition would have any impact on. I mean, they've really thought that kind of thing through, and they have no issue with it.
But maybe the homeowners someday will have an issue if they decide to put a parking lot there. I'm
Yeah,
just-
I just, yeah, I mean, I think it's a valid discussion, I'm not suggesting otherwise, but it just seems to me, since their person in charge of that sort of thing is writing this letter, they would have said, well, in the future, we might be doing such and such, so we might have some, and they haven't said anything of that nature, so I really honestly don't feel that that's a concern.
Can I speak to that question? In terms of Phelps, one of the things.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, you have to identify yourself.
Oh, sorry, I'm Dickerson Miles, I'm the homeowner, 3 Terrace Close, I'm sorry. Yeah, so in terms of. one of the-
Mr. Miles, do you mind standing up?
Oh, no,
Okay, closer. Thank
I
you.
guess we want to be picked up by this
So,
mic.
in aspect to Phelps and the view of Phelps and any construction we're to do there, one of the design elements that we built into this project is to shift the views that are currently out our living room window, our kitchen windows, to the hospital, which is a bit unsightly in the winter, to shift those views to the east and the west with small high windows to the north with Phelps. So I think if we did this, any future owner would appreciate the fact that whatever Phelps built would not have a large window viewing out to it. It's only going to be small raised windows at the top, so that we won't be looking at Phelps any longer.
Right, it's sort of, it speaks to any privacy issue is actually being dealt with in a positive way with this addition, any concern about privacy or looking into windows and that sort of thing.
But we still have a matter of 9 feet.
Yeah, my question would be based on, from the property line in the back to the driveway, the parking lot, do you know how far that is?
Well, this is the lot, I mean, it's gotta be a few hundred feet, you know, it's a long distance based on this Google doc here, this is the house, you know, just where this little dot is.
And right now.
I would say at
it's,
least a few hundred feet, it's,
Is it just
I mean,
long?
quite honestly, looking at it, you don't even see the parking lot.
Right.
I mean, now, from the property, I mean, if you,
But is it lawn or is it like?
oh, it's all wooded, there's no lawn. I mean, you know, maybe a bit of lawn right here next to the property, but, I mean, next to the parking itself, or the
Right.
road itself, but all of this, from this little red dot, you know, arrow,
Yeah, I get it.
there's a pretty substantial amount of wooded area, and I have to think they're gonna keep that buffer. I mean, there's certainly, from a residential area, that's their, you know, they want to keep the residential area happy, you know, they don't want to infringe on it, and
I
Building
question
closer
whether
to
they
that.
could even legally develop that part of the property
I-
due to setbacks.
That's what I was
I think there'd be
thinking.
some
I don't,
substantial
I don't even
setbacks for
think they,
hospital.
yeah, I think that is primarily dead space.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there would be, you know, substantial consideration of whether they could develop that part of the property, and input from the village and input from you
Yeah,
and everyone else who lives in the manors before they
absolutely,
they
yeah. No,
touch a tree over there.
and again, like I said, I have to think they're always forward-thinking institutions like this, that's the role of this guy who wrote this letter, and they have no concern over it, so.
Right.
I'd just like to make a comment. While it is jarring when I first received this to see, you know, it go down to 9 feet, I think that's definitely where the role of this board comes in, because every regulation does not fit every exact situation. And just again, I appreciate the information that you have supplied. Seeing that this is a dead end, a small dead end street, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah,
A little
okay. So it's really,
turnaround,
there's
yeah.
2 neighbors on the side, a wooded area, hill going up to the hospital.
Yeah. it's-
And that,
it's very,
okay, yeah. I appreciate that, thank you.
I mean, in my view, if they put the addition to the front of the house or to the west of the house, it would be less aesthetic for the neighborhood than
Yep.
where they're proposing to put it. And that's just my view. Do you have any other questions?
No.
So I'll make a motion to open
Want
the
to hear from
public.
the public?
Yeah, exactly. I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak in favor of the application or against?
Sure.
Thank you.
You want me to come up and?
Yes,
Please.
please. Just announce your name and address.
Marie Guarneri, residing at 1 Terrace Close. So we are the neighbors directly to the east of the Nelson's residence.
Right here, I guess.
Yep, literally right there, right backing up to their driveway. So we are potentially the only ones who could see this addition if we tried to. Because literally the way,
Peeking through it.
yeah, literally the way their house is situated, as you talked to, where they're proposing this addition is so kind of set back that we would have to stand in the far back in our backyard behind our shed to even see it when it's built. So it's by no way any kind of intrusion on us or our property. And also just to kind of speak to the hospital, so that is their driveway coming into the hospital. Not only is it all wooded in between, the actual road is actually quite a bit above us, it's elevated. So I see it like in the future for them to develop on that, they would have to tear down their current parking lot and build a new one, because it's not even level. It really is a wooded area, kind of overgrown and not terribly sightly, but I doubt that anything is gonna happen there anytime soon. But I just want to show my support that really from a neighbor's perspective, I mean, I prefer that they put it there than they put it in the front of the house, and I think most people would. So, but I think we're it in terms of being able to see it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Thank you.
I'm happy to speak. Hi, my name's Katrina Lempensky. We own 4 Terrace Close, which is essentially diagonal to the Miles house. Just a comment that we can't see their house at all, so we would have to actually walk out into the close, the circle, to see the front of their house. It would be impossible to see the back or the side of their house unless we actually went into their property. We have absolutely no problem. We're in full support. And I'd also just mention that as a relatively new homeowner, a younger homeowner on the close, I think it's really important that the board demonstrate the progressivity and the openness and the willingness to hear cases like this, especially considering my husband and I, amongst many other friends who are actually buying the manor, coming up from Brooklyn and places of that nature, are looking to know that there's openness and flexibility to the homes that we're working on. So fully support this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on the application? Okay, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So, you want to express your views? What?
I still have a concern in regard to the 9 feet. That's my biggest worry and concern. And plus, if we do this, now it puts presence for the future, other homes in the area.
Well, again, but I'd make the point that we're looking at this specific situation where it abuts and the size of the property and the layout of the property and where the house sits on the property.
I do
Yeah.
understand your point.
That's,
But-
he was talking.
I'm sorry, Greg.
But, yeah, I mean, I think, if I comment just a little bit on that, your precedent is important, but you really have to take into account the condition of this property. And yes, if there was another property that had the same awkward site and the same lack of visibility from other areas, then yeah, you would maybe approve it based on the fact you approved it here, but certainly most properties aren't like this, and there are many scenarios where you wouldn't approve it, and no one would be able to say, this is a precedent, you should approve me, because of all these specifics of this specific property. You could say, listen, they had a particular situation there which is unusual in terms of the lot configuration. This does not apply to your project, so I don't think should be any fear that you'd be put in a position of having to approve something you wouldn't because you wouldn't want to because you approved this. It's just not, again, because of the specific circumstances in this property, that would not be setting a precedent for doing it in other cases.
May I just,
Uh,
property owner?
Yes, please come up and just state your name.
I'm Jennifer Miles. I live at 3 Terrace Close with my husband Dickerson. I have 3 children. I just wanted to say that we're asking for an exception, and I do understand this is outside of the normal zoning rules. We're not setting a precedent. We're not trying to change the rules across the board. You know, we have a lot size that is irregular, and ordinarily the backyard does have a setback of 25 feet. We don't have a backyard. We have a side yard. And so, you know, the backyard right now, quite honestly, is not used. We have never used it for anything other than maybe storing some of the kids' old toys. I'd like to see it go to good use. I think our house, the size needs a kitchen bigger than the one that we have currently. It's been my dream to have a new kitchen, so this is what's standing between me and my new kitchen. But thank you so much for your time and consideration. And I do hope that you take our facts and circumstances into consideration.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but from my point of view, none of you are going to be here the next time someone comes and says, look what you did here. You say, it's all right for you to say, you know, you're not setting a precedent. However, you might. But you won't be here to defend this. We will have to be here to defend it.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
You know,
I understand your need, totally.
No, but every fact and every situation
Sure.
is different,
Absolutely.
right? So I know you would take that into account in making a decision.
Right.
And every application has to stand on its own, precedent or not, right?
yeah.
And Richard, I would say that
Thank you.
we've made exceptions when there's pie-shaped properties, and there wasn't a big,
Right.
you know, we're setting a precedent. No, it's a unique shaped property.
Well, I would defer
So-
to the chairman because
Yeah.
we will be the ones, you know. have
But
to
I'm just
deal
saying
with
there's precedents that we've made exceptions before.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the applicant's point is well taken, in that you have a narrow width lot, which is very lengthy on the other ends. And what they're building out into is not towards someone else's backyard, but commercial property that doesn't look like it will ever be developed. We'd have to really speculate to think that it
No, I understand it.
ever would, yeah. And if we're gonna evaluate whether this produces an undesirable change in the neighborhood, it won't, because like the applicant established, there's no one going to be able to see this except
Well, I would
for
defer to you.
yeah, no, I know. And I'm just stating all the reasons for the record, so when somebody does pull the videotape and see that we're setting the precedent, we consider all these factors, and we'll do it for the next application.
Okay.
It is something that really, if they try to do this in another part of the home, they're really going to make the neighborhood worse. This really can't be done in another way that improves upon the neighborhood. Obviously, if it goes front, it's going to look terrible. And if it goes west, it's going to, abut a beautiful lot and be much more visible than it will be the way it's going. And then I don't think it's substantial because, really what they're doing is they're building out the footprint of the house, yes, but they have plenty of space within the setbacks where they're not exceeding the permitted square foot size in that lot. And then we've established that they're not building into any environmental conditions. And one reason you have setbacks is because you run utilities, but that's really for maybe more closer to the village, and there's no utilities that
Yeah.
are going to be affected by this. So I actually think what they're doing is the most reasonable, minimal way and the best decision for the neighborhood. That's my view. And I think the applicants essentially met all four of the first criteria. And I do think it's self-created, but I do understand the argument based on the narrow depth of the lot that it's may not be, but I do think it's self-created, but that's not the only consideration we have when we evaluate an area variance. So, again, I would support the application, but I think we need to be fair to the applicant to see if they want to take a vote now. If the vote now is unsuccessful, then you can't come back to us for 6 months. And then you could come back to us to likely a fuller board, or we can defer and potentially have more zoning board members at the December hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, just for the record, they could come back prior to 6 months if the application significantly changes.
Okay.
Just so they're aware of
No,
that.
we don't want to do that. I mean, I don't know, I mean, it's one more month, I mean, and it's supposed to be 7, what, 6, 7?
It's supposed to be 7.
7.
Yeah. Right now, we
But-
currently consist of 5 members.
Yeah.
We had 2 recently depart.
Right.
So we're trying to rally a couple new members to the
Oh,
board.
so you might not even have. Well,
What sort of revision would we have to do to come back in a month's time?
I think, as Sean said, it'd probably be a substantial revision to the application. You could simply defer tonight and leave the application as is and defer the vote until December meeting. Or you could take a vote now. If it fails, then you'd have to substantially revise the application to be back in December. Or if you don't revise it, come back in 6 months.
that's like a catch-22, isn't it? Because if you revise it, I mean, you're saying, and I think you're correct, and I think most of you think you're correct in what you said, that this is really the best way to do this addition. So we do something that's less good for the neighborhood, that it may not even require a zoning variance. It just makes, it's just not rational, right? I mean, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to be put in that position, doing something that is just bad and maybe avoiding the zoning board altogether. Not bad necessarily, but not as good as an option as this. I don't know, can't you just get in the back and tell me how you're going to vote and not really vote? That's kind of an absurd position to be in a little bit. It's like crapshoot. I don't feel like gambling. How are you going to vote? Tell us, just whisper it to me.
I will defer to your judgment.
Do you want to make a motion to, well, this is a public hearing. We have no reason to go in the back room and discuss this. So it sounds like the best decision might be to show back up in December. But
Well,
that's really your call.
Yeah, well, that's really your fault. Think so? Yeah. I mean, all right. Okay, I guess we'll.
So are you asking to defer the application to?
Yes, they're asking to
defer.
All right, so I will make a motion to postpone the vote on the application until the next meeting. Is there a second?
Before you do that, Mr. Chairman, would it be helpful to perhaps give the applicant some guidance prior to coming back? Should, for example, they try to justify why they need to go out 15 feet
Yeah.
and not 13 feet? I mean, to sort of rationalize why that setback is requested?
I understand totally.
Yeah.
I get
And
it.
would it help you guys? If
It
you
might
saw
help,
something
yeah.
like that?
How about if you provide a little bit more insight on the abutting Phelps property and the ability to develop that, would that help?
I mean, I could just research what kind of setbacks they're required, which I didn't do. I was thinking I should have done that when it came up, but I'm
Yeah,
not sure
that
what kind
would
of
be helpful.
setbacks they would have, what they're required to have. I should double check on
Okay.
that.
Anything else that we can think of?
Or maybe some other similar properties on cul-de-sacs where this situation also occurs?
Yeah.
Because it's really the shape of the cul-de-sac that's pinching the property,
Yeah, the odd shape of the property is, yeah.
and so that creates sort of the non-conformity.
I mean, and it is interesting that New York State guidelines specifically state the irregular site as a reason for zoning boards to grant this kind of variance, so it's
But
very
other
clear in terms
specifics
of a
would give you
precedent.
guys some,
Yeah, well, something I understand.
some ammunition to,
Right, I think we might need a little ammunition, because if we decide on it, yes, and then in the future, I have to,
you want to
again,
have some support.
I have some support, I have no support right now. And we've had other places like this, but not quite like this, where there's, we've had other property in homeowners, not something like a hospital or a corporation or something like that. So that's my concern.
But they said they didn't have a concern. I mean, that's why they supplied that letter, correct?
Right,
Right.
and that's today's CEO. Let's see what happens in 2 years.
Well, we can't,
Well, you can't do that.
that's not the role of the board to play a crystal ball, though. With
I
all due
know.
respect, right?
Well, I think you
Come
do have
on.
to take into consideration how they feel now, and that's the only fair
Right,
thing to do.
it's right
You
now.
You can't create some scenario where they would have some issue that they don't foresee themselves. That's just not fair, to be blunt. I mean, to
Right now, they don't.
yeah. Yeah, but they're living in the present.
All right, well, I think we have a fair picture of some of the
Yeah.
factors that would assist the board at the next hearing. And I think I already made the motion to postpone it,
You did,
so.
you did, yeah.
But do we have a second and an all in favor?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
All
Okay.
right.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, we may want to also mention that I believe next month we will hold a meeting via video conference.
Okay.
Oh, Zoom or something?
Zoom,
Yeah.
it'll be
Yeah,
a
yeah,
Zoom meeting
okay.
because
All right. Just getting, yeah,
understand the predicament that's going on.
that's what most of the boards are doing these days, of course.
Unfortunately,
So I
this
know.
meeting was already noticed prior to things.
Right. Getting a little worse,
Getting
yeah.
worse,
No,
so-
I understand, yeah,
You
absolutely.
can assume that you'll get a notice. for-
Yeah. All right, very good.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank
I guess
you.
we'll see you again.
Okay, we have the resolution regarding 123 New Broadway to review.
Okay.
Does everyone have a copy of it?
Which one is it? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Along.
Do you have a copy of this?
Sean, did Clinton review these? Did Clinton review the resolutions?
They were sent to Clinton for his review. Have you heard anything back from him?
Not as of last time I checked.
I could check my email now.
Does he usually confirm that he approves, or he doesn't?
Yes, he does, for the planning board, he goes reviews minutes and makes comments if he has any.
What if he has no comments?
Then he'll tell me, okay, he'll
And he-
respond.
And he hasn't responded on?
No, I don't think he,
So
I don't see
would it make
anything.
sense if we wait till the next meeting to go through these? Because I know,
I think you can, right?
yeah, well, he'll just be commenting on 123 New Broadway, he won't be
No,
commenting on
but
this.
he will
Right.
comment on the minutes.
Yeah, okay.
so we can,
You could postpone them if you're not,
And
if you want to review them.
read them before
yeah.
we have to sit here and read them, and we'll have read them prior to the
Absolutely.
12.
You can send your comments directly to Pam if you want.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So we'll make a motion to postpone the public hearing on the approval of the minutes and the resolutions.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I make a motion to close the hearing. Second? All in favor?
Aye.
I know.